Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this dreary Wednesday. Well, dreary where I am. Hopefully, you have sun where you are. And so today, I keep playing with my glasses. They're just not sitting right. Let's blame the puppies for knocking them off. So today with us, we have, of course, another amazing author, but I have already had the opportunity to read her book, which doesn't always happen on the show. So that's going to make the conversation a little bit more interesting. So let's welcome Betsy Gall. Hello.
Hi, Randi-lee. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So do you have a dreary day or a sunny day?
It's kind of overcast and cloudy right now. I'm hoping it clears up, but
yeah, we have some sprinkles of rain. I was not impressed.
yeah.
Yesterday was gorgeous out. Gorgeous.
Same here. Hot, really hot.
Yes. So where are you visiting us from?
I'm actually in Charlotte, about 25 miles north of Charlotte, North Carolina, in an area called Lake Norman.
Very cool.
Yes.
So tell us a little more about who Betsy Gall is.
Oh, a big question.
It's the hardest one of the whole thing.
Betsy Gall is a mom. I have 3 amazing kids. Grady's 22, Gavin is 19, and Sophie is 18. I am an active real estate agent. I'm an investor, a landlord, and I remodel a lot. And I guess people call it flipping. I do a lot of that. So I'm quite busy. I wrote a book that was published about, a year and a half ago, after my late husband and I moved to North Carolina for a job related move for him, and unfortunately ended up taking his own life. So in a quick synopsis, that's who I am. I'm 54 years old, and I've lived a great life. I still have a really great life, but there have definitely been some bumps along the road.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember when I read your book that you had a puppy. Do you still have a puppy?
Oh, Randi-lee, we just lost her. Yes, I have to tell you, that was really, really tough and very unexpected. Liberty was with us for 10 years. Beautiful, beautiful British cream golden retriever. So if you don't know what that is, it's a golden retriever, but she was pure white. And she just had the sweetest demeanor, and she was so loved, and just had cancer. We didn't know it, and went really quickly.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, at least she went quickly, because suffering is the worst.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Poor baby. I was hoping, because since I had read your book and the puppy, and I love animals, so it's the most important part of the whole thing.
I was know. Like, we are getting a new one. We are. I keep telling everybody we're having a baby. We are going to have a baby in June. So.
Okay. Do you already have the type of dog picked out that you're going to
It'll actually be the same type. Yeah. Okay. We were so pleased with her. So we're just going to go back and get another one from where we got her. So.
Aw, that's so sweet. And so you need to get a nice, beautiful picture of her on the wall so you never forget her. Not that you ever would, but
no, we couldn't.
Yeah. So moving on from that sad topic to another sad topic.
Right?
I was like moving on, but then I'm like, wait, we're just going from sad to sad. That's fun. But it is a very important topic that we're going to get to. So we're going to talk about mental health and your late husband's death. But leading up to that, because you do a really good job describing in the book, and we're gonna talk about the book at the end, but I'll probably reference it because the book is about this topic. You do a really nice job of describing your thought process throughout it. So I kind of want to get, how did you feel during all this? Because it couldn't possibly have been easy. with having that happen. So my takeaway from your book, for those who have not had the opportunity to read it, uh, is that your husband, it was an oncologist, right?
Correct.
Right. So an oncologist, that's a doctor that deals with cancer, for those who don't know. So when you think of a doctor, you think of somebody who's super smart, who has their shit together, for lack of a better term. And that's the vibes I got at the beginning of your book when you're describing meeting him and how he just was always so dedicated to his work. You do a really good job of describing this person who you never would have thought would end up the way that his story did. Um, and I think that's so important to note, is that we don't always know, we don't usually know what somebody is going through unless they tell us.
Right.
So
Correct.
how did you handle kind of everything? And I have more background because I read the book, so you might want to give a little bit more background
Right.
for those listening.
Right. Yeah. So basically, just quick background was Matthew and I moved our family from Minnesota to North Carolina for him to take a new position with a small private practice. And when we arrived down here, we were all really hopeful and super excited about the move. And it was kind of just a fresh start for everybody. I talked about in the book. There were some issues. My son had been bullied at the school he had attended, and Matt was kind of having some issues at work. And we just thought a fresh start would be great. So we arrived in North Carolina in August of 2019, and we were here for about a week before Matt felt like he had made a grave mistake. And he kept saying over and over, this was career suicide. And I feel like I'm watching a slow car crash. And I was like, okay, like what? Okay, let's just back up here. First of all, it takes a long time. Mostly people say a year to become adjusted to a new job, especially with a big job like being an oncologist. You go from having all your systems set up and your staff to kind of just a whole new environment, new people, new systems. And it was just a lot. And so he fell into this depression very quickly. We had been here like about a week. And I couldn't tell people, oh my, we just moved here. My husband's suffering from depression as he's trying to set up his, practice.
You didn't know anybody.
Yeah, I hardly knew anybody. It was very strange. It was very lonely. And now I can easily identify with anxiety because I had never had it before. But I felt it and I had to live with it. It took me a while to figure out even what it was, but my heart was beating super fast all the time because I just thought this was so out of character for him. He was Mr. Positive. He loved our kids. He loved me. Anything he put his mind to, he did. And it was just so shocking for him to then go from being such a vibrant, literally larger than life, over the top personality. Funny. Super funny, fun to be around, kind of exhausting because we'd go on vacation. I'd get the vacation set up and then we'd get to the destination and he would make us see and do everything.
Oh, he sounds like me. That's what I make my husband do. We got to go do this. We have to go see that. Yes! No, we can't sit. Yes! Go.
I would get home from vacation. I'd think, oh my gosh, I need a vacation. He just like went, like 24/7. So it was really hard, like really scary. And I had never been around a depressed person before. Mm-hmm. So the whole experience was completely new for me. I didn't really even know the facts and the signs or what to look for because I had never been affected by it.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. When you don't know really anything about it, how are you supposed to be like a support when you have no idea what to do, that it's never been a thing? And you said you were what, 54?
Yes.
Yeah. So really growing up in the era that you did with school, I bet you it was not talked about.
Oh gosh, no. No. I mean, I really did have, and I write about it in the book. I mean, I really had an idyllic childhood. We didn't have a ton of struggles, and I just was completely unaware of how sudden depression can come on. You kind of think of like, I mean, I always thought of mental illness as like, homeless people, on the streets. And I didn't think of my physician husband, who was brilliant, of having mental illness, you know?
Yeah.
So it was really, I was struggling with that. And of course, just moved to a new town with three teenagers.
Mhm.
So here I am
One that you
trying
said
to
was
like,
bullied too, right?
well, we had moved him out of that situation,
Right,
but he was
but
a senior in high school and dealing with a move. I mean, it wasn't easy, you know?
yeah. Well, and even though you moved him away from where he was bullied, and that
Oh,
impacts your future, right? How you're feeling about yourself, even if you've moved away from the environment that it was occurring.
correct. Correct. And he is the poor kid. Yeah. I mean, it has really been a struggle for him. So that was really the closest insight I'd ever had to depression, because Grady had struggled with it and had kept it a secret. And actually, Grady, each of my children writes a little synopsis in the book, and Grady brought up a really good point, that men have a really hard time opening up about their feelings.
Oh my goodness, me and my husband talk about that all the time.
Yep.
He's always saying how, yeah, men, you are told, suck it up, right? Especially, I mean, maybe not as much in my kids' generation as much as my husband's and older ones, but men don't do those things. You suck it up, you do what you have to do, and you move on. You're not allowed to be emotional.
Exactly. And
And
especially being a physician, then you have that added. He
right?
was supposed to have all the answers. He was taught in med school to never show any weakness. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how they're trained.
Well, and I read in your book that he was worried that it was if he admitted to it, that he would lose his career.
It was a very real concern for him. And I have come to find out, since Matthew has passed, I dove into researching, and
Yeah.
because I just didn't know that physicians died by suicide. We lose one a day. 1 million patients a year lose their doctor to suicide. I
Oh,
just had
wow.
no idea. The numbers are staggering. Um, and so I felt called to write the book when I found all of this out. But there are very direct correlations between the way our physicians are trained, and then they do ask these invasive questions about mental health on some licensing and medical board exams. And so that is something that,
Oh.
we're trying to change. And I work closely with, I'm an ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation. Dr. Lorna Breen was also 49 when she died by suicide, a physician in New York. That was during COVID. You might have seen it
Oh.
on the Today Show. But her brother-in-law and her sister have started this foundation, and they are working very hard to change those laws, to get those questions removed
Mhm.
from the licensing boards.
Yeah, and I mean, a little piece of me goes, "Okay, I get kind of why you're asking them," but a bigger piece of me goes, "You know what? If they can't admit it, they are gonna not be as good of a doctor because they're hiding, and the stress that would take to do so, and then also not getting help for whatever it is that they're hiding." Uh,
Correct.
to be able to admit it and then be able to actually get the proper help, because sometimes it's just a matter of some therapy. Sometimes it's a matter of proper medication, right? Like the mental illness is not a death sentence if you can go and get proper help. It's not something that makes you incapable of doing high level jobs.
Exactly. Exactly. You can get better. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell everybody is you can get better. But Matt absolutely refused when I asked him to go. we had a physician friend in Minnesota that I was confiding in, and I said to this Dr. Foley, he won't listen to me. And he said, you have got to get him. He needs to exercise. He needs to see a psychiatrist. He needs to get on an antidepressant, and he needs to sleep. Because then at a certain point, I don't know, we'd probably been here for 3 weeks, and Matt really stopped sleeping. And he would ruminate over his whole life. And he kept saying, I screwed up. I screwed up. And I just thought, well, my goodness, it's a job. Like, let's quit. This is not the end of the world. People make mistakes. Not every job is a fit for everybody. And let's just get out of here, because we had kept our lake home in northern Minnesota. And I thought we even have a place to go live.
Yeah.
But it was just incredible. His mind was so strong, and he was so stuck, and just felt very trapped. And he did have a non-compete. I think these non-compete clauses in people's contracts are awful. He had a non-compete in North Carolina. He had a non-compete in Minneapolis. So he felt very trapped.
Yeah. And again, I understand from a business perspective why you would want a non-compete, but you said it, not every job is a good fit. So how do you know if you want to stay there without kind of a trial run, and then maybe sign the non-compete after that? If it's like,
Right.
okay, yeah, this is a fit. No, I won't steal any of your clients. But I mean, to make that decision before you even know if it's going to be a good fit, it definitely could have devastating results, obviously.
Yeah. It was just another layer in a lot of layers that
Yes.
added up. You
Yeah,
know
it's
what I
never
mean?
one thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I read in the book there was a part when he had locked himself in a bathroom.
Oh, yes.
That part I definitely went, "What? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." So can you share um the oh my gosh moment and
Right.
how you felt and how you helped your kids deal with that situation?
Right. So what happened was, it was the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, and Matt's parents had come to town on Monday, and they're from Wisconsin. And Matt's brother and my sister-in-law Diane had just moved here about 3 weeks prior. So, you know, you could visibly tell that Matt was sick. Like he had a whole different look. He was kind of vacant, and he just wasn't acting like himself. So when his parents got here on that Monday before, I kind of downloaded them on everything that had been happening.
Mhm.
And I had been confiding in my sister and my brother-in-law. So um, on that Wednesday, that particular Wednesday, they were coming over for dinner. And I think I had been like at my sister-in-law's house, and then I came home, and I couldn't I couldn't find Matt, but his car was here. And then I realized, I don't even know how to, I mean, when I tell the story, it's honestly like I feel like I'm floating watching somebody else's life. It's
Well,
like watching a movie. You
you're
know what I
in
mean?
panic survival
Yeah,
mode.
you're now my heart is beating 1,000 miles a minute, just on hyperdrive. But somehow we figured out he was in the bathroom and he had a gun. And I was like, what the heck? I mean, oh my goodness. And he kept saying, is Sophie home? Is Sophie home? Because Sophie's room, our master bedroom, is on the first level. And so Sophie's room was above that. And I was like,
Oh.
I don't, yes, she's home. And then my brother-in-law, I was like, Chris, this is crazy. I think he has a gun in there. And Chris was trying to pry the door open and couldn't. And Matt was really strong, like super muscular, really in shape. And, I could just see these sweat beads rolling down my brother-in-law's forehead. And my sister-in-law was pacing outside the, the door, my bedroom door, and saying, I'm going to call 911. I'm going to call 911. And we were really confused. Like, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? I mean, what do we do? What do we do? And then my son Grady walked by. Grady was 17 at the time. And I said, Grady, Dad has a gun. I have to, help. And he, along with Chris, finally broke that door kind of open, and we got the gun out of Matt's hand. And then they took him to the ER that night, or right then, right away.
Yeah. Whew, that's a
Yeah.
whole lot. That is such a whole lot. And when he went to the ER, did they do anything for him?
Well, this is the problem. So, I was exhausted, and it was Thanksgiving the next day. And so I was just like completely exhausted. So Chris and Diane, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my son Grady took him to the ER. And I said, tell them everything. Tell them everything. And so they did. But of course, Matt lied and said that he was just purely exhausted, that he wasn't suicidal, that it was, a misunderstanding. And eventually, and they did not have a psych unit there. They did, I guess, film Matt and had somebody that they were talking with at a different hospital, but they did not have a physical psych person there. So they actually sent him home. And when Chris and Diane brought him home, they had given him a sleeping pill. And my sister-in-law said he took the sleeping pill, and so he should sleep. And that's what I kept praying for, because I kept thinking, if this man could sleep for like, a week, he would come to his senses. Like, he's just exhausted.
Yeah.
And he's not thinking clearly. If he could sleep, like, this could get all cleared up, because he's so smart. Like, he knew he was sick, but he just wouldn't help himself. So they gave him that sleeping pill, and so they brought him home. I want to think maybe it was like 11 or 12 at night. And so I just thought, oh, thank the Lord, he's going to finally sleep tonight. And then he did go to sleep for like 3 or 4 hours, and then woke me up and said, Bets, what's going to happen? And I just thought, oh shit, the sleeping pill didn't work.
And then 3 or 4 hours is not
enough. No, and not when he had been the best sleeper ever. I mean, that guy could sleep for 10 hours, So this was another foreign thing for me. I'm the early bird. I'm the one that gets up and goes to the gym and, ready for lunch by 9 a.m. It's like, it was just completely out of character.
Yeah.
And then that morning, now it's Thanksgiving morning, I was pleading with him to please get in the car, get dressed, get in the car. We were going to go to the hospital that had psych. And he didn't want to do that. And then that's when the whole scenario went down. It was really awful.
Yeah, when I was reading the book and you were describing how it was going down, I was like, you were right there. You were right there in the car. And then he was
in the backyard. So he had gone into our backyard, and I was in the car waiting for him. I had written a note to my children, because I think it was like 5 in the morning, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. I've written a note to the children that I was taking Dad to the ER and that we would be back later. And I went to the car, and then he didn't come out. He didn't come out to the car. And so I went back in the house, and it was dark. And we had these French doors that went out to my backyard, which was kind of really creepy. Like I said, I'm in real estate. So we bought this house that was a complete fixer-upper, and we were going to put a pool in and do all these things. But at the moment, the backyard was like this forest, and it had this like decrepit old kind of hot tub that had been built in. It was just creepy. And, it's pitch black, and I'm like, Matt, are you out here? And I could hear rustling in the bushes. And I said, you are really scaring me. You need to get in the car right now. Like, we are leaving right now.
Yeah.
And he didn't come out of the bushes. I said, I'm going to call 911. And he said, are there going to be sirens? And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? In my heart, I mean, I just can't even describe it. So then I ran to the car. I was in my garage, and I called 911. And then that's when the shot went off.
Oh my goodness. So he waited for you to kind of leave the vicinity.
I guess.
Yes.
I mean, a blessing. I mean, I have so
Yeah.
many blessings throughout this tragedy. I'm in a suicide support group, and what some of my friends have been through and the trauma that they've seen, it is unreal. Suicide is a awful way to die, and those of us that are left behind all have to become investigators. We all feel this shame and guilt that we
Mhm.
didn't do enough. And at the end of the day, I did everything I could, and I I was in therapy for a lot every week, for 3.5 years. My
Yeah.
kids are in therapy. You have to get help because it is a tragic, awful way, and it's very complex and complicated, especially when it's a doctor. Because my husband went to work every single day to save lives. And so the fact that he took his own was so perplexing. He loved his patients. He loved cancer care. He was super hopeful about it. He talked about his grandfather, who was a pastor, who wanted to live to be 100 like his grandfather did. And so this was so unexpected, out of character, and so tragic
Mhm.
that it just really leaves you, you know, shattered and crumpled
Yeah.
and in a mess. And so I urge anybody out there listening that is contemplating suicide or thinking about it, like, please don't do it. Please try to get help. You can recover. And just if you can't think about yourself, think about those that you would potentially leave behind. It's awful.
Yeah. Whew, that's a whole lot. I'm
Yeah.
glad I'm glad that I was able to read the book first because I would just be like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
what?" So at least I kind of knew what our conversation was gonna be this time. I don't usually, which I usually am, um, like having the surprise of not knowing, but this is such an emotional and huge conversation that it was
Yes.
good that I sorta knew what was gonna happen.
Right.
So there's a few things there that I just want to point out. So one of the really big things that you were saying is that it was out of character, out of character, out of character. I think that's one of the biggest red flags when it comes to mental illness is that if you have to obviously know the person well enough, but if something seems completely out of character, why? Maybe they're just like have a cold. I get out of character when I have a cold. Maybe they're having a bad day. We all have bad days, but why? Right? That is a very important question to answer. Why are you out of character, especially if it's multiple days out of character or multiple things out of character? That is so important to try at that moment. Go, hey, you're not like yourself. Can I help you? Can I take you somewhere? What do you need me to do for you? Um, not, I mean, sometimes it's out of your hands, but that seems to be a giant red flag that happens.
Yeah.
Um, Another one is um my mind went blank there. Ah, this happens a lot to me. When you're talking about the struggle after the fact and you're talking about, I'm you had to go into the suicide support group and all that stuff is there really is this big could I have done more like you were saying. And I'm don't have the same experience as you, but one of the big things that I had to deal with when my brother had died, so for those who don't know, he died by a drug overdose, was the could I have done more, right? And like you said, ultimately you did everything that you possibly could, but it is a burden afterwards to go, what could I have done? Should I have done something else? Should I have, I don't know, hog-tied him and thrown him in the trunk? Like, honestly, there's only so much that you can do as an individual. So I love that you were saying you made sure to say that you did everything that you could do and that there is kind of a forgiveness piece of it that you kind of have to let go of the what could I have, what if, what should.
You really do. You really do have to let go of it. And it's not, and I wasn't the only one struggling with that question. All of his friends, my parents, his brother, my brothers, everybody, everybody that is affected by it is always thinking, what did I miss? How could this have happened? And it's real tricky. I tell my kids all the time, dad just got sick, which he
Mhm.
did.
Yeah.
And um, it really was like watching one of his patients get cancer. I mean, for him, it was very quick. This happened in the span of 3 months. And I have explained to them, because all of us obviously have had a lot of therapy. And I
Yes.
always tell them, you just need to tell me because I'm not inside your head and nobody's inside your head. And you need to speak out if you need to get the help, and we will get you the help immediately. But letting go takes a long time, and it kind of is like the grief process. Some days it's easier than others.
Yeah.
Um, but I have chosen to let go. I have chosen to live my life. We only get one. I don't believe we're here for a very long time anyway, so I want
Yeah.
to enjoy it. At the end of the day, every single one of us is going to pass away.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of life, right? Death and taxes. And it is, I think, how you choose to get up from situations such as this or any situation that causes pain and suffering, and learn and take the lessons, and then move forward. I always tell everybody, I'll never be over Matt Gall. You don't just get over it,
Yeah.
but you must move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. A few months ago, I was having a conversation with somebody, and that's the way that we decided to word it. We're like, no, it's not a get over because they
Yeah,
are always a piece of you. I mean, they're a piece of your kids, but you do have to learn to move on without that piece there physically.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
learning to live with grief, and that just takes time. It
Yeah.
takes time. I had been through the grief process before. My on again, off again college and high school boyfriend was killed in a car accident when we were 21 years old. And I guess, I looked back at that thinking, wow, that really prepared me for this. Just knowing what the process is like. Because
Yeah.
if you told me at 21, where I was just so in love with this guy, he was my boyfriend, we were best friends. If you had told me back then, you know what, Betsy, look, you're going to have this great life, you're going to marry a great guy, you're going to have a wonderful, beautiful family, I wouldn't have believed it back then.
Yeah.
So that prepared me for then when Matt died. And then I was able to tell my kids that, this moment is really hard and sad, but it doesn't have to define you or us as a family. And suicide is really tough, but that's, we don't need to focus on that. That's not how dad lived his life. And we need to live, and we need to keep doing fun things and having great experiences. And I'm really happy that my kids have chosen. I mean, it's hard. There are definite days, and Grady, my oldest, struggles a lot. But for the most part, we have taken this experience and chosen to do good.
Hmm. Which is really hard to do and so amazing because not only are you speaking about your experience, but you are advocating for change on a bigger, grander level with doctors and the questions and things like that. So,
Yeah.
one other,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to just say, one other thing that stuck out to me in your book, and you have said it during our interview, was the use of the word sick. I love your choice. So, mental health is what people usually say. But when you hear health, you generally think you're good, you're fine, right? I don't say my physical health is bad. I'll say I'm sick or I have an illness or I have a broken bone, whatever it is, but I don't say my physical health of my broken bone. Like it just, you don't do that.
Right.
And so when we're talking about mental health, it really should be okay, mental health because you're in a good mindset. Mental illness when you're not doing well or you are sick.
Yep.
Because that is just because you're not sick with is something visible, you're not sneezing doesn't mean that you're not sick in it sounds weird, but sick in your brain, right? Like that's it.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah,
You are sick in your brain.
exactly.
And I firmly believe that if Matt had gotten cancer, he would have fought for his life, tooth
Yeah,
and nail. He would have fought, but this was so shameful. He felt so much shame and he was so embarrassed. And that the fact that he wouldn't get help, which I thought was so strange because I was like, you're a doctor. Like you're a doctor. You are smart. I mean, he was way smarter than I was. And I couldn't wrap my brain around the fact that he wouldn't help himself. And he was so strong-willed. So that's why it's so tricky. And I do feel like my husband was an extreme case. He really, like, he kind of lived his life, you know, like that. He was the bull in the china shop. He didn't really have a filter. I mean, he loved and he loved hard. He cared for his patients. But he didn't fight for himself. And that was so strange. But I think if he had had cancer, it would have been different.
yeah.
But it really was like watching somebody get cancer. I mean, here went, you know, this man loved doing the lawn. I mean, the lawn was perfection. All the neighbors would joke about him doing the lawn. He had knee pads. I mean, and he would wear his music and he would be out there for hours. We had this perfect lawn. From going from that to not being able to, when we moved to North Carolina, go pick out a new lawnmower, just laid on the couch, sent me and the boys to Home Depot. It was like, what the heck? And then after he died, you know, it is very shame. You just feel the shame. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are all my neighbors gonna think? How are people gonna look at us? And then my father-in-law said, well, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody that he died by suicide. And I thought, well, that's kind of stupid. I mean, everybody's going to find out.
Right. Yeah.
But I tell my kids, he got sick.
Yeah.
He got sick and he wouldn't get help.
Yeah. Well, and even just that I'm not telling people that he died by suicide, that is part of the problem. That is part of the stigma associated with it. Because again, if somebody had died by cancer, you'd say, oh yeah, they
Right.
died, they had cancer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there really is this giant stigma of don't tell anybody that you are sick. Don't tell anybody that you're feeling whatever you're feeling in your brain because apparently we're not allowed to be sick in our brain. That's
Right.
not a thing. But the truth of the matter is you can be sick in your brain. Your brain can tell you lies. That's what I like to tell myself because when my depression hits, I don't know, my brain is a big fat liar.
Yep. That's
And
exactly what it is.
yep, your brain is a liar. My brain is sick right now. I need to go back to therapy or I need to switch my medication up, whatever it is. But right now, I am experiencing an illness and I need to get help.
Right. Exactly. 100%, really.
But the stigma is, you know,
Yeah.
shh, don't tell.
Yep. Yep.
So is there any before we talk about the book? I mean, we've kind of talked about the book the whole time, but before you reveal the name of this book,
Oh.
is there any last words that you want to share?
Well, I just want to thank you for raising awareness around this tough subject. It's a tough subject. And I'll just reiterate, if you have any of your listeners out there that have contemplated suicide or are struggling with their mental health right now, that I just urge them to get help because you can get better. You can, you even when it feels so dark, you can get better.
Yeah, definitely. So, drum roll. What is the name of this book that we've been talking about?
So the name of the book is The Illusion of the Perfect Profession. And I really take, it's a culmination of my journals because when we arrived in North Carolina, I really just felt God wrap his arms around me and say, right. I'm not a writer, like I said, I'm a real estate agent. So I didn't really know what I was doing. And that's kind of how it all came together. I felt very called to share how my faith has kind of carried me through. And then just the warning signs about physician suicide, and that, the public really needs to be made aware of this. I think we're in for some scary times. We already have a doctor shortage. And when we lose a doctor to burnout or, God forbid, suicide, it's not good for our country. It's not good for any of us.
Yeah. So where do people get their book?
You can get it on Amazon. It's been out on Amazon for about a year. That's probably the easiest way. My publisher does have a website, Kirk House Publishing. And if you just Google that or Google my name, it should take you there.
And where do people follow you?
Well, I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook, and it's just really me. I'm just the one man show here, and I post about my life. I post about, my kids, and so if you want to follow along on my journey, I'd love to have you. But I don't have hired professionals. It's nothing super fancy. It's just me.
Is mine. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. So everybody be sure to check out all of Betsy's links, and honestly, the book, you should read it. If you want to check out the review that I wrote on it, go over to the rbwriting.ca website, check out the blogs, it's in there. Or of course you can listen to it on what I'm reading. Just, scroll back a little bit, and you'll find the right episode. It's, it's a quick read or a quick listen. If you have not already been drawn to the book through our conversation, which I don't know how that wouldn't happen, but just in case, there is my review there, and I definitely think it is a great read. Very emotional, though. You might want a box of tissues nearby. Just like you probably had during this interview. So thank you so much, Betsy, for coming on the show and sharing this very hard topic.
I appreciate you spreading awareness and having me on. Thank you so very much.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media, because we have some great new shows coming up, and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.